In this class, we're going to continue our study of English composition. We're in the fourth lesson in our textbook, and the title of the lesson is Essentials of Expression. So let's get our notes ready. Just make sure I see where we're at over here. Let's make sure we get our notes ready. The title of the class is English Composition. English composition, and this is lesson 4. And the title of this lesson is Essentials of Expression. Essentials of Expression, lesson 4. So far in this course, we've been studying to learn the basics of English composition. We haven't gotten into composition yet. All that we've done so far is talk about composition, talk about what composition is, why modern students don't like writing, what the causes of that are, and then we got into some basic ideas about where we can get ideas from and why some sources of ideas are better than others. We said that modern students fail to learn to write well because modern schools require them to write about topics that they're not interested in, topics they don't know anything about, and that unhappy experience of being forced to write about topics you're not interested in and you don't know anything about is unnatural, and it actually makes people not like writing. But we learned that we should like to write as much as we like to talk. And the difference in talking is that we talk about things with people we want to talk to, and we talk about topics that we're interested in and that we have knowledge of. And that's why talking is pleasant. And writing is unpleasant, not because writing itself is unpleasant, but writing is unpleasant because schools make writing unpleasant. We then talked about where the ideas come from for us to write about. Where do the ideas come from? And we learned that there were 3 different sources of ideas. First was our experience. Second was our imagination, and third was through language, through the study of the experience and imagination of others. So there's 3 sources of ideas, and we said that ideas that come from our experience are the best. The best source of ideas are those that come from our experience, and we listed a number of reasons in the last lesson why ideas that come from our experience are best. 1, we have a multitude of ideas, an abundance of ideas that come from our experience. Your brain is just producing ideas and recording information constantly. There's an abundance of ideas that come from your experiences. Secondly, we said that the ideas that come from your experience are clear and definite, right? We said they're clear and definite. You know exactly what happened. You can describe all the details. They're clear and definite. We said that also because you learn the ideas and they're your own experiences, you can match your own words to those ideas, and you can talk about or write about those ideas in your own language, and it makes it most comfortable for you. They're not ideas that you learn from other people. You don't have to use other people's words or expressions to share ideas that you've never actually experienced. And so we talked about the advantages of writing from ideas that come from experience. In this 4th lesson, the title is Essentials of Expression. Essentials. And our textbook doesn't tell us the meaning of this word, but what does essentials, when we read essentials of expression, what are essentials? What do you think the word, when you hear the word essentials, what comes to mind? Essentials. This is essential. What idea comes to mind when you hear the phrase, this is essential? Any ideas?
You should say kitchen essentials.
Kitchen essentials, well, that's an example, right? So what does that mean? If you heard the expression kitchen essentials, what does that mean?
Accessories.
Accessories, but what does it mean though? I mean, what does the word essential mean? Any idea? No? An essential is something that's necessary. Essentials are necessary things. So with the example you gave, you heard of kitchen essentials, it means things that are essential or necessary for the kitchen. Pots, pans, towels, knives. You see? Kitchen essentials, things that you have to have in your kitchen. Right? Bathroom essentials. Towels, washcloths, toilet paper. Those are bathroom essentials. Bedroom essentials. Pillows, sheets, blankets. Okay? Essentials, things that are necessary. So this chapter leads us in a study of things that are essential for expression of ideas, things that are necessary. Okay? So let's go ahead and we'll read through this fourth lesson here in our textbook, and we'll talk about it as we go along. Lesson 4, Essentials of Expression. There are two essentials. There are two essentials of the proper expression of ideas. The first essential is to say what you mean. And the second essential is to say it clearly. So right off the bat, we're taught that there are two essentials in expression. And this seems very simple. So there are two essentials in expression. Number one, say what you mean. The first essential is to say what you mean, and the second essential is to say what you mean clearly. And note that this is just expression. This isn't essentials for composition. This is true of speech as well. Say what you mean and say it clearly. And I want to talk a little bit about this and add some things that we're not going to find in the book. Say what you mean and say it clearly. This isn't talking about just composition. This is also talking about speech. And as you grow up, you have problems with your writing and your speaking because you don't practice the essentials of expression. First of all, to say what you mean. Say what you mean depends on your language skills. Because you may have experiences and ideas. You have ideas in your mind, and because of your weak language skills, because you don't study grammar, you don't read literature and build your vocabulary, you don't learn the words and the expressions that are necessary to express complex ideas, you actually are not able to say what you mean. You're not able to express your ideas in words. And so if you have a dumb vocabulary, and if you're not constantly studying to build your vocabulary, learn new expressions and so on, you're going to have ideas that might be valuable, but you, because of your lack of language skills, can't express them. Do you understand that? And that's unhappy, because there are people who are not well educated who may have very important ideas or beautiful ideas and unique experiences, and they can't share them because they can't find the words, or they don't know the expressions that would allow them to share those ideas. So this first essential of expression, to say what you mean, depends on your language ability. It depends on whether or not you have the vocabulary to actually share the ideas that you have. You can have ideas in your mind that you are not able to share because you cannot say what you mean. Or what comes out, because you don't have the exact words, what comes out is not exactly what you want to share, right? So you say something to people, you've got this idea in your head that you want to share. You try to share it by speaking or writing, but the message that they get is not what you intend for them to get. And you can tell that they are not understanding what you're saying. I'll give you a good example of this if you remember this. It just popped in my head. There's a movie of the life of John Bosco, all right? And at the end of John Bosco's life, he's laying in bed and he's dying. Do you remember that scene where he's dying at the end of his life? And he is talking, John Bosco is talking, and there's a priest standing next to his bed. The Virgin Mary appears to John Bosco. John Bosco's old and dying. The Virgin Mary appears to John Bosco while he's dying, as he's dying, and John Bosco is trying to communicate this idea to the boys who are there. He's saying to the boys, Our Lady is here with us, right? But he's dying and he's weak, and he doesn't say what he means. He's not able to express what he means because he's dying, right? And the priest is standing at his bed, and the priest is listening to his voice because he can barely hear him because he's so weak. The priest hears what John Bosco is saying, and then the priest looks up and he speaks it loudly to all the boys, right? And Don Bosco is saying, Our Lady is here with us. And what he means is, she's here right now. She's here, I see her. She's here right now. But the priest doesn't understand what he means, and so the priest says, Don Bosco wants us all to know that Our Lady is with us in spirit, and you see what I mean? So the priest is saying one thing, and John Bosco says, no, I mean she is with us here in the house. And the priest who's relaying the message to the boys doesn't understand what John Bosco is actually saying. And so John Bosco is having this experience at the end of his life, which he wants all the boys to know about, but he's not able to say what he means. In his situation, it's because he's weak and he's dying, and he depends on this priest to hear what he says and then share it with the boys. But every time the priest goes to share the message, he changes it a little bit because he thinks John Bosco is saying something else. And you can see John Bosco on his deathbed is frustrated because he's not able to say to the boys what he means. You understand that? Okay? That's what it's like to not be able to say what you mean. And many people live like that. John Bosco had that problem because he was dying. But many people live with that problem because they are not able to express what they want to express. They cannot say what they mean. Or because they're lazy, and they don't make an effort to say what they mean. They don't make an effort to think about it or to prepare, to think before they speak. They just babble They don't think about what they would like to say. They don't try to choose words carefully. They don't articulate those words carefully. They don't write them clearly, and they fail to say what they mean. They actually say something that isn't exactly what they'd like to share. So the first essential is to say what you mean. To say what you mean. All right? And you've all had that experience. You've said something, and then you've seen the other person's reaction, and you've said, no, that's not what I mean. Right? Like you say something, and somebody gets angry, and you didn't even say anything that should make anyone angry, but the person gets angry. And you're like, wait a minute. No, that's not what I meant. Right? That's not what I meant. And so you can see we fail to express our meaning. We fail to say what we mean, and that leads to all kinds of problems and confusion, misunderstandings, and things like that. Okay? So the first essential, the first rule in expression is to be careful. Be careful to say what you mean. Okay? And secondly, when you figure out what you would like to say, you have to make sure that you say it clearly. All right? Say what you mean, or have something to say, and say it clearly. All right? Those are the two essentials of expression. Two simple rules. So we might get into all kinds of details about composition, but it all comes down to two simple rules, and you should just be asking yourself, do I have something to say? Right? Am I saying what I mean? Do I know what I want to say? Because sometimes we speak before we're even ready to share any ideas. There's a good story in the Bible, an example of this. In the Old Testament, there's a man named Ahimaaz, and he experiences an event, and he wants to be the messenger. He wants to be the one who goes and shares the news. So he asks, can I run? Can I go? Can I go share the news? And so in this story, Ahimaaz runs off as fast as he can. And he runs all the way to the king, and he goes into the king's presence as fast as he can. And the king asks him and says, what news is there? And Ahimaaz, when he's standing before the king, says, I don't know. So he runs all the way to the king, and then when he gets in the presence of the king, he says, I don't know. Because he didn't even pay attention to whether he actually had something to say. He was just so excited about running that he paid attention to getting there as fast as he could, but he didn't have anything prepared to say. And so there's this embarrassing scene where the king asks him to just stand on the side because no one knows why he came. So don't be Ahimaaz, right? You've got to make sure you have something to say, and you have to say what you mean. That's the first essential. The second one is to say it clearly. And saying it clearly is not so much about you, right? Saying it clearly is thinking about how you're going to share the idea with someone else. Okay? There's a lot of things I can talk about, and I can talk about them in a way that you wouldn't understand. And, I could say, I have this idea, and I have shared the idea. The words that came out of my mouth painted the picture that I wanted to paint. But then I think about you, and I say, wait a minute. If I say those words, even though those words allow me to say what I mean, for my audience, you're not going to understand it, so it's not clear. So not only do you need to say what you mean, you also need to think about your audience and make sure that you share it in a way that's clear to other people. Remember, writing is not for you to express yourself. Writing is for you to share ideas with other people. So those other people determine what you should write or what you should say. Do you understand that? Okay? And when you talk to different people, you have to change your words. You have to speak differently. You have to write differently because different people can receive different messages. All right, so 2 essentials. Say what you mean and say it clearly. Let's go back to our reading. Without these 2 things, without these, what you say may be not only valueless, but positively misleading. Without saying what you mean and saying it clearly, what you say may be valueless, may be worthless or useless, and, even worse, it may actually mislead someone. By not speaking clearly, you may actually cause someone to think the opposite of what's true, or even the opposite of what you wanted to communicate. If you wish your hearer to understand what has occurred at a certain time and place, you must first of all know yourself exactly what did occur. You have to think before you speak. You must know what did occur. You must express that in language that shall make him understand clearly the situation as you understand it. So first you need to conceive of the thing clearly. You need to make sure you have words that can even express the ideas, and then you need to consider your audience, consider who you're talking to, and make sure you communicate it clearly. You need to take notes because you don't know these things. And we'll see that the first time you try to write or speak and you break these rules, and then we have to pretend like writing and speaking is some kind of mystery that no one understands. You must know yourself exactly what did occur, and you must express it in language that shall make others understand clearly the situation. Then the textbook author says, you will learn much about clearness later. You will learn much about clearness later. In other words, it's one of the topics we're going to study all through composition. We're going to learn how to write clearly. But even now, you can tell whether you know what is meant by a sentence which you hear. It is not so easy to tell whether what you say will convey clearly to another the meaning you intend to convey, but it will help if you ask the following questions. So sometimes it's difficult to know. I really don't know what's in your head. I really don't know what you understand and don't understand. If I read a sentence out of a book, I don't know if you understood it or not. Sometimes I can tell by your expression, but it's hard to know what other people actually understand when we speak. But the author of our textbook gives us 3 questions to ask. 3 questions to ask that will help us to make sure that we have something to say and that we say it clearly. Okay, so let's look at these 3 questions. The first question is, do I know exactly what happened? Do I know exactly what happened? Do I know exactly, and the key here is exactly, what happened? Do I actually know what I'm talking about? Have I taken the time, before I try to talk or write, have I taken the time and made the effort to actually make sure I know the details? Do I have something to actually say? Or do I just want to talk to hear myself? All right? Do I know exactly what happened? Or am I like a Himaaz and I'm just running to speak and I really don't even have anything to say? Do I know exactly what happened? And this applies to all subjects, not just your own experiences, but if you want to write an essay about a topic in school, do I know what happened means, have I actually studied carefully? You know? If I want to talk about another religion or another person or if I want to criticize Russia because of this war, have I actually taken time to learn the details of what's going on? Or am I just spitting out some ignorant opinion? Right? Everyone's talking about the war in Ukraine right now. Everyone's got the opinions and everybody's an expert on, politics and war and everything else. But have we actually taken the time, has anyone taken the time to actually learn all the details? Do we actually know what the leaders of the different countries think or what they've experienced or what they're trying to do? Do we actually know the details of the situation? Have we taken the time and made the effort to learn first? Or are we just spitting out our opinions ignorantly? So this idea of, do I know exactly what happened? Don't just think of it in terms of your experiences. Think of it in terms of whether or not you've taken the time to get all the facts first, whether you've actually studied, whether you've actually looked over or thought over the event and made sure that you're just not reacting before you've thought about it, or before you got all the information, or before you heard both sides. Okay? Do I know exactly what happened? Think before you speak. Make sure you have the information before you try to talk or write about it. Secondly, the second question we can ask, have I said what I intended to say? Have I said what I intended to say? And I mentioned that before. We've all had that experience where we've said something and then we could tell by the other person's reaction that they didn't hear what we feel like we said, that there's a disconnect between us. It didn't come out right or something like that. This often happens when we try to be funny. We try to say something funny and the other person's offended by it because we were just careless in our language and we said something and we didn't think about how it might be understood by another person. Right? We meant it as a joke. We meant it silly. We meant it innocently, but it came across offensive and made somebody upset. We have to be careful to ask, have I said what I intended to say? And again, one of the, what wisdom would tell us is sometimes it's better just to be quiet, right, and not say anything than to always try to have a comment and possibly offend somebody or confuse somebody or mislead somebody. It might be better for you if you don't know exactly what happened and if you're not good at saying what you intend to say, then you need to learn that you're a person who needs to be quiet more until you learn exactly what happened and until you learn how to say what you intend to say. The third question that we're taught to ask ourselves, have I said it so that it will be clear to the listener? Have I said what I want to say in a way that will be clear to the listener or to the reader? And this is why speaking and writing, like I said before, comes down to the golden rule, right? You have to think about the other person. It's not about yourself. There's an idea in writing in modern circles where everyone wants to be a poet because they just want to express themselves. But writing is not about expressing yourself. Writing is about sharing ideas with other people It's about communicating. And so you need to ask yourself whether or not you've shared your ideas in a way that is actually helpful to the other person, that's clear to the other person. Not clear to you. It doesn't matter if it's clear to you. That's only part of the challenge we face. It doesn't matter if it's clear to you. What matters if it's clear to the other person. So if you're talking to a 60-year-old man, let's say you're talking about the military. If you're talking to a 60-year-old man who fought in a world war, you can talk about the military in a different way than you can with a 17-year-old kid who, went to basic training. The kid in basic training doesn't understand war the way a 60-year-old veteran does. And they can be talked to in different ways because of their experience, because of their knowledge. And you have to talk about the military differently to a 6-year-old kid who doesn't even know what you're talking about. Right? When your audience changes, your speech and writing has to change. So it's not about self-expression. It's not just about saying what you want to say. That's not what it's about. It's also about saying what you need to say in a way that the other person can understand it. Sometimes there are people with a good sense of humor who, if you say something in a humorous way, they'll understand it. And it's a good way to communicate to them. Sometimes I use humor to correct bad behavior, because one way to correct it is by making fun of it. That's what comedy really is. Comedy really is supposed to be making fun of foolish behavior. But for some people, if I make fun of them, they'll be so upset and embarrassed that it actually can hurt them. And I have to know, this person has a sense of humor and will understand this. This person doesn't, and they won't understand this. Some people can understand figurative language. If you use a comparison or a fable or a simile or give an example, they can understand figurative language. They can think for themselves about how the example teaches the lesson or how this fable teaches the lesson. You can use a simile. You can say this is like this or a metaphor, and the person will understand. There are some people who can't think figuratively, and you have to speak to them clearly and literally, or they won't understand. Right? If you use a figure of speech, it will confuse them. And so you have to know the audience, because how the audience thinks and what the audience understands and the audience's personality determines how you can communicate with them. And you have to study people to learn and understand that. Okay? You have to take the time and make the effort to study other people to learn how to communicate to them. And we think about politicians, right? Politicians who want votes. They have to think about how to move people to vote for them. Salespeople have to think about how to speak to people to sell their product, because people like different things. Some people like to be left alone. If you go to a car dealership to look at new cars, some people just like to look around by themselves. They'll go to each car. On the car, there's a sticker on the window, a piece of paper. It's got all the details about the car. Some people would like to just go and look around by themselves. They'd like to read the stickers. They'd like to take their time. They don't want to talk to anyone. Other people would like for the salesperson to meet them at the front door and show them around. If you're a salesperson, you have to know which is the better plan. Do you understand that? Sometimes people like salespeople. When you walk into a store at the mall, sometimes a person working in the store will greet you at the door and ask if there's anything they can help you with. Some people like that. Some people say, no, leave me alone. You know? I'm not 4 years old. I know how to buy a pair of pants. I don't need somebody to help me. So there's different personalities, different interests, and to communicate, you need to make sure that you understand what the people you're speaking with understand or like. So these 3 questions, we can use these anytime we speak, anytime we write. If you're sitting at the dinner table and you're about to say something, you should ask yourself, wait a minute, do I know exactly what happened, or am I going to say something dumb? Do I know exactly what happened? Have I said what I intended to say? This is a helpful question, but it's kind of like too late, right? You should actually ask yourself, am I about to say what I intend to say, right? You shouldn't, after you say it, then ask, wait a minute, have I said what I intended to say? That's really not the best way to do it. We should try to think about that before it comes out of our mouth. And then, have I said it in a way that will be clear to the listener? And remember, this isn't just about ideas. This isn't just about ideas. This is also about our speech. If you come up to somebody all excited and you want to tell them something and your emotions are out of control and you're all riled up and you start talking, that's not, it's not helpful, right? You've got to calm yourself down and speak clearly. If you speak quickly, if you're a fast talker, you have to realize that's a bad habit, and you have to learn to slow down and speak clearly, because you're expressing your ideas with words, but no one else has any idea what you're saying because you're talking so fast. They have no idea what you said. Or you're walking into a room. You know, you guys do this to me all the time. I'll be at my desk working and I'm doing something. I'm thinking about something, writing something, doing some work. And you'll be coming in to tell me something, and you're not even in the room yet, and you're already talking. And when you get in here, you're already halfway done with what you wanted to say. And I didn't even know you were talking to me. And you get in here and you go through this whole thing, and then I look at you and I say, what did you say? I don't even know what you said. I didn't even know you were talking to me. But what I want you to see, do you see how you started talking? You started talking because you wanted to share something, but you didn't even think about the other person. You didn't even think about whether the person was paying attention yet. Do you understand what I'm saying? You understand? You have to think about the other person. If a person's back is turned toward you and you start talking to them, they may not even know you're talking to them. You need to think about those things. You need to get their attention first. Make sure they're listening first. So there's lots of different ways. What I want you to see here is there's lots of different things to think about. Not just ideas. Not just ideas. But also, is the person paying attention? Am I speaking clearly? Am I saying this in a way that the person can even understand what I'm saying? Not my ideas, but my words. You'll notice when I teach, I repeat a lot of things. I say things again and again. I repeat them with different words. Because I want you to understand, I want to make sure you heard what I said. And so I'll say it again and again. Because I want to make sure it's clear. Because I want to make sure you understand. Because I don't want you to forget what I said. I'll repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. I'll explain something and then look at you, and I can just see by your face that you have no idea what I'm talking about. And so I'll explain it again in different words. Okay? So we have to think about, do I know exactly what happened? Have I studied? Have I got all the details? Have I listened to both sides? Do I know exactly what happened? Do I actually have something helpful to share? Okay? Then, have I said what I intended to say? Have I said what I intended to say? This is also helped by grammar because sometimes if we choose words or expressions, those words and expressions can be understood in a number of different ways. Right? I can use a word, we see this in all of our classes. I can use a word that has a number of different possible meanings. Do I want to use that word and leave it up to the person to choose a meaning? Right? I want to avoid that. So if there's a way to express an idea that could be understood in a couple of different ways, I don't want to use that idea. I don't want to use that expression. One of the benefits of grammar, follow me here. I'm not saying this just because I want to express myself. One of the benefits of grammar is that you can learn how to express your ideas in a way that cannot be misinterpreted, that cannot be misunderstood. You can make sure that you say exactly what you want to say, and you can make it so clear that no one can twist or misunderstand your words. That's one of the benefits of studying grammar. Have I said what I intended to say? And lastly, have I said it in a way that will be clear to the listener? And that doesn't just mean ideas. That can also mean whether we're speaking clearly, whether we have the person's attention. There's a lot of things to think about. Okay? Whether someone's already talking and I start talking when they're talking, all of those considerations. That all has to do with clarity. Okay? So 2 essentials of expression. Say what you mean and say it clearly. Say what you mean and say it clearly. Those are the 2 essentials of expression. And then there are 3 helpful questions we're given. 3 questions that are helpful for us to ask ourselves. And like I said, these questions aren't only for when you're writing an assignment for school or something like that. These questions are helpful anytime you open your mouth, anytime you write anything, a text message, an email, anything. Anytime you speak to someone, these 3 questions should be in your head. If you want to communicate clearly, if you want to have to say everything that you try to say 10 times because the person didn't hear what you said, or they didn't understand your words, or you were talking too fast, or they weren't even paying attention yet, you can do that. But if you'd like to if your words are important to you and your ideas are important to you and you'd like to communicate them clearly to accomplish the goals that you have in speaking to someone or in writing, then these questions should always be in your head. All right? Do I know exactly what happened? Have I said what I intended to say? And have I said it so that it will be clear to the listener? All right? That's the content of section number 4. Where are we at time-wise?
43.
Okay. We've got some time. Now, after section 4 in our textbook, there is an activity. So before we begin writing in this course, what this textbook and this author does that's helpful, because he's a really smart teacher, the man who wrote this book. Before we start writing, what did he explain in the lessons? He said, speaking is pleasant. Writing is often unpleasant. We need to start by speaking and then realize that writing is just putting down in writing what we would speak, right? So the first exercises in this book are actually oral exercises. They're spoken exercises. He doesn't ask us to start writing right from the beginning. So the first exercise in this book is here at the end of the 4th section. You see, oral composition 1. So not written composition. Oral means with your mouth, spoken composition. He says, report orally on one of the following topics. Report orally. So if there's one of these questions that you find interesting, he always gives us a list of topics. He doesn't assign a topic for a writing assignment. This author, because he knows you have to write about something you're interested in and that you know about, he'll always give a number of different topics to choose from. Or he'll just say, consider these topics, and maybe these topics will help you think of another topic to write about. So the first question or first topic, he says, were you so interested in anything yesterday that you told it to your parents or friends? So he asks you to think about your day yesterday. Think about yesterday. Yesterday might not be a good example because we were in class all day yesterday. But think Saturday or Sunday, right? Were you so interested in anything that you told it to someone else? So think about that. Was there anything that happened in your day that you were really interested in and you wanted to go tell someone else? Was there anything like that in your day that you can think of? Second topic. Tell about something that you have done this week. Tell about something that you have done this week so that the class or so that others may know exactly what you did. Tell about something that you have done this week so that the class may know exactly what you did. Third, name some things in which you have been interested within the last 2 or 3 months. So maybe you can't think about something yesterday. Well, think back 2 or 3 months between now and, let's say, New Year's, right? Name some things in which you have been interested within the last 2 or 3 months. Tell the class about one of them. And lastly, tell the class about something that happened during vacation, maybe last summer. Tell the class about something that happened during vacation. Have you told the event exactly as it occurred? And as you think about this, his point, and you need to get your brains working a little, okay? His point is you have shared stories with other people. You have went and talked to other people about different things. There have been things that interested you. I can say, some of you have come to me to talk about, oh, when you were at the pool and you were swimming, this happened. Oh, and you saw this, and this person said this, and this, but this. Oh, and I was at the gym and I was doing this exercise and I saw this, or I was outside and I saw. You come to me and you tell me about things that happened. Why? Because you're interested in those things and you want to share them, right? So these exercises ask, was there anything that you were interested in that you went and told to someone? What was it? So let me ask you this, and I'd like you to answer. Was there anything yesterday that you were interested in and went and told to someone? Can you think of anything yesterday that you told someone yesterday? Anything you can think of? Or anything you were in? Stop, don't look at other people. It doesn't matter what someone else is going to say or think. Don't be so wimpy and concerned about what other people think. Was there anything that you were interested in that you went and told someone about? Anything? Anything that you did this week that you'd like to talk about? Anything? No? Well, let me talk about another topic then, because of course there are, and this is a common problem in schools where the students sit there like stones and don't talk about things. Something you have to learn in composition and speech is that you have to have the courage to learn by practicing things. If I write an article, or if I make a video, or if I write an essay, there's a possibility that people are going to criticize it. And that's always true. And it doesn't matter, because the people who criticize are the people who are not speaking. The people who criticize videos are people who don't make videos. The people who criticize poems or movies or books are people who don't write books and don't make movies. Do you understand that? And so what just happened in this class is a good example of one of the problems in modern schooling, is that in order to become a writer, in order to become a great speaker, you're going to have to write and speak. In order to start a business, you're going to have to get started, and other people are going to criticize you when you get started, but they're not starting a business. You need to wake yourself up, because this is your study. You can go back and lay in bed if you'd like to just sleep all day long. One of the problems with students is that they worry about what other people think, and if they don't have the virtue of courage, they can't learn to do things because they're afraid to try to do things. Do you understand that? And someone's got to start. If you want to play a sport, you have to go to practice, and there are other kids at the practice who are already good at the sport. And you know what? When you go to practice the first time, you're going to look ridiculous because you don't know how to throw. You don't know how to catch. You don't know how to kick. And if you're so worried about embarrassing yourself or looking silly on the first day, and you don't have the courage to overcome that, you won't be able to begin because you're so worried about what someone else is going to think. And if it's time for you to write an essay, you're going to be so worried about what other people might say when you try to write your first essay, which is cowardice, that you won't write and won't learn because you're afraid that your first essay might not be very good. Of course it's not going to be very good. And so there's a moral challenge in learning to write and speak well. There's a moral challenge that many people never get over. It's a challenge to your courage, whether or not you're willing to start writing and start speaking. Because the first things you say, the first things you write, they're not going to be good, and people might criticize them or laugh at them or say it's stupid or something like that. But by making the effort to start practicing, you'll start getting better. But if you're so timid and weak that you won't make that effort because you're so worried about what other people might say, that will actually cause you to not learn to speak and write. Do you understand that? So when someone asks you a question and instead of thinking of the answer, you look around to see what other people might think, that's cowardice, and you have to learn to overcome that. It doesn't matter that there's a group of people in a class. You're in a class to improve yourself in that class. And you have the opportunity to improve yourself. And the way that you improve yourself is often by taking a chance. You understand that? You have to take a chance. You have to be willing to try something. And you have to go through that first embarrassing experience, maybe of saying something dumb. If I ask a question in class, sometimes you're afraid to answer. Why? Not because you're afraid of saying the wrong thing, but you're afraid of what some other person who didn't answer might think. Isn't that true? So somebody who doesn't know the answer and doesn't answer, you're going to worry about what they might think instead of saying what you think, because even if you answer what's wrong, even if you say something that's not perfect, it's an opportunity for the teacher to talk about what you said and help you to understand it. Do you understand that? And so there's a moral challenge to learning. There's a moral challenge where cowards can't learn because they're afraid to try things and take the first step. If you want to learn to play the piano, you have to play bad music first, right? And you have to have everybody yell at you, "Stop that. It sounds terrible." But if you're going to learn to play well, you have to be willing to play badly first to get started. And most people will never be able to overcome that cowardice. You understand that? You have to learn that in class, if I ask a question or there's an exercise, you have to learn to take the chance and realize that when you take the chance, when you offer an answer, when you respond to the activity, the teacher's not going to make fun of what you say. The teacher's going to use it as an opportunity to explain to you what's wrong about it. And you're going to learn. But you've got to be willing to take that chance. Not have this silly, effeminate, wimpy spirit that's always worried about what other people think. You understand that? So there's a moral challenge to learning. There's a moral challenge that you have to overcome to learn. All right? So you have there an oral composition exercise in class that students won't be able to participate in because they're worried about what other people think. That's a moral problem. And you can see how that moral problem is standing in the way of you learning to speak and write well. Do you understand that? You're going to let other people rob you of the opportunity to learn because you're worried about what they might think or say. And you have to grow up and overcome that. You have to overcome that. All right? So anyway, there's an oral composition there in the textbook. We're out of time for this class, so we weren't able to actually practice that oral composition because you chose to act cowardly and sit there and worry about what other people say. But at least you know now that there's a moral obstacle that you have to get over in order to learn. And not just in composition class, in anything you do in life, starting a business, anything you do. Anytime that there's leadership needed, someone has to step up and be willing to take a chance, possibly to fail, and not concern themselves with what other people think. Sometimes the person who's willing to take a chance, even if he fails, he motivates other people to step up, or the group learns from his experience and they get better. But a leader has to take that first step, and you have to learn to do that. You have to not worry about what other people think, especially if you're going to learn to write. You're going to have to start by writing badly. You're going to have to start by speaking poorly, and then receive correction, and then improve and work to get better. And over time, you'll gain the skill, and the idle critics who sat around just criticizing people and mocking and scoffing, they'll be sitting with no skills. And no one will care about their criticism. Do you understand that? You have to get over that weakness. That's one of the challenges of writing and speaking well. You have to be courageous. So, lesson 4 is on the essentials of expression. We said that there are 2 essentials. You have to say what you mean, and you have to also say it clearly. And we said that to help us to consider those 2 essentials, our author gives us 3 questions to ask ourselves whenever we speak or write. Do I know exactly what happened? Have I said what I intended to say? And third, have I said it so that it will be clear to the listener? In addition to that, we've had a practical lesson, a moral lesson that says if you don't have the courage to begin speaking and writing because you're worried about what other people are going to say when you try to get started, you're never going to get started. And your cowardice is going to keep you from learning how to speak and write. And that's something that you have to learn to overcome. So that's all for section 4 in English composition. So take a minute and write a summary of what we've gone over in this class, and that's all for lesson 4.